moved forward last night into a little bit of prophetic move when we started looking at the reality of the bride of Christ in relationship to the things that we had learned in relationship to men and women, Ish and Isha. Tonight what I want to do is I want to do something that hopefully is going to be life-changing for you. Life-changing because of the information that's given, as well as for the sake of helping you understand perspective. There was several of you who had renewed your vows today, and that was pretty awesome. And Valerie and I had talked about it and said, you know what we ought to do is we ought to, every Sukkot, we ought to renew our vows. And I was telling Jason at dinner time, we were just talking about whenever you're away from somebody for a period of time, you should always be able to look at their lives and see that they've changed. So I made an agreement with a youth pastor many years ago when we got split apart. He went to go do pastoring. And so I knew I was only going to see him like once every 6 months. So I said, the first thing that I want to know the next time you see me is, have I changed, and have I changed for the better? And so next year, Yah willing, if I'm still alive, you never know what the Lord's going to do, but Yah willing, if all continues to keep running, 2 people healthy, moving forward, all that kind of stuff, then my desire is that when I renew vows, I'll be able to say, tonight was the least exciting, least knowledgeable point in my entire history. And that next year, I will be at this time, I will be so much further along than I am now. And it's just a challenge that I reminded myself of tonight with a conversation with Jason that I made with the youth pastor years ago. Is that the next time that you see me, I hope that I've grown and I hope that you see a change. Well, the next time Sukkot comes, I hope that the change is significant and it's different. We've been talking about relationships between men and women, between Ish and Isha. And in this responsibility that God has given, I think we've learned quite a few things. The problem is that once you get this understanding, now you're held accountable to it. So now when you're held accountable to it, you have to figure out exactly how you're going to deal with this. How does the rubber meet the road? In fact, I've had probably a half a dozen guys come up to me and say, okay, you've taught us what the Ezer Kenegdo is. Okay, you've taught us what the Ish is, what the Isha is. You've taught us what the Zakar is. You've taught us what the Nikavah is. You've taught us Selam. You've taught us all these different words. So we have all of this intellectual assent now about these things that our English just can't bring out. You've taught us what it means to be in the image of God and to be made in His likeness, and what it's like to be in the Garden of Eden, as well as to be to have the freedom to freely eat all of the things, as well as what it means to surely die. So all of these things are great facts and pieces of information to be able to take and to be able to put in your cap and say, good, I know those things. But for me to just be able to say, okay, I know these things, but not know how to put them into practice is completely a different thing. So the question is, how do you do it? So the first thing that I want to tell you is I want to give you a reality check. Okay, so tonight is going to be really practical. There's going to be a point tonight where I don't know exactly what I'm going to say and what I'm going to teach. I've been praying basically for the last hour, thinking about things in relationship to tonight. But this is one thing that I can tell you. This graph right here should help you understand the essence of life. Okay? This may not look like much to you, but this is all the difference in the world. This is what's going to happen when you head back to Wichita Falls, or you head back to Oklahoma, or you head back to wherever, California, or whatever. This graph is going to set in. This is going to set in. Especially for those of us that made a commitment of renewal. You see, in life, everybody has high expectations concerning things. When you make a commitment, you have high expectations. You think the best is always going to happen. Whenever reality sets in, like here, the difference between expectations and reality is called disappointment. Okay? Now, the first thing that you need to do whenever you make a decision that you're going to do something different than you've ever done before is that you're realistic. You can't expect anything to change overnight. For instance, if you're like most marriages, there's been marriages that have been up and there's been marriages that have been down. Just as the marriage in relationship to Messiah, Jesus, Yeshua, and you, there's high expectations of what you expected the relationship to be like at certain times, and then the reality was like this, and then the in-between was disappointment. How many of you know what I'm talking about? Right? You have certain expectations of what the spiritual life is supposed to be like, but then when you find out the reality, then a lot of times we become disappointed, and that disappointment sets in, and all of a sudden, before you know it, you're just going, you know what, I'm not sure whether this stuff is really, really worth it or not. So I want to address some of this evening, but in order to do it, we have to go back to Genesis chapter 3. Now what my goal is going to be tonight is to not only bring in realistic expectation, but to having literally counseled hundreds and probably thousands of couples over the years, knowing what every couple goes through. I know what every couple goes through because I've been through it. And I've been through it in the last 6 months. All of it. The highest and the lowest. The highest expectations, the lowest reality, the greatest disappointment. And you know what I found? That the majority of it was me. And so as a result of that, I have learned so many things in a short period of time. So my learning curve when it comes to marriage is like this. And remember, I told you that I used to think that I knew everything about marriage. But in actuality, what I did know about marriage only allowed me to survive. It really didn't allow me to thrive. And what I'm hoping for you guys is in your marriage relationships that you'll begin to thrive. Okay? That's what I really hope. So, what we want to do is we want to shrink this. But not expectations coming down, reality coming up. That's what we want. This is ideally what we want. And we want the disappointment to be very, very small. The reality is these are my experiences. So this line right here is experience. This is the reality. These realities. Here's where we need to spend our time talking tonight. And if we spend our time examining Scripture right here, then what's going to happen is you're probably not going to run into the pitfalls. Because I can guarantee you, men, that what's going to end up happening is this expectation and this reality that your wife had, it's probably not going to match up immediately. Okay? And there's a reason. Now, I want you to go to Genesis chapter 3, and I want you to look at verse 1. And I want to explain some things to you in relationship to this, and I'd be curious if some of you used your new Bibles to find out just how they compare. And I'm not quite sure, but I know we're not using the heater, and if we move the heater out of the way, if we just, if we rolled it up or we slid it over here, then that would allow that light to come here, and that wouldn't make this board so dark.
Yeah, you'd have more room.
So then that would give more room, and that would also make life just a little bit easier.